Well, good morning, biology students. It's Mr. Olson. I think today is day 41 of our distance learning. This is our last video for biology. So you've completed or should have completed all of your work so far in biology class. You can go to classwork right here, take a look. So this is really all of our assignments listed. I've had some questions on, hey, where can I find the rubric for the final project? As you know, really that out of school project is all we have left. Um, as you look here, you don't see it. So where is it? Well, you're going to have to click view more. Okay. When you click view more and then scroll to the bottom, you should see your distance learning project. And that's where you can view the rubric and kind of look over things as well. Okay. So make sure you look at that. All right. So let's kind of talk about what you need to be doing now that this is really the end of the semester. So uh, as you go look at and have found your rubric and have kind of looked over that, your slideshow should also be in there. Okay. Everything is going to be due. Let's kind of pull up a calendar here. It's going to be due the 26th. You'll see I've changed two things on the final project. I've made it out of 140 instead of 150. Why? Well, you're not going to be presenting it, and so those 10 points of just presentation preparedness aren't going to be factored in, and so you're going to just see a few less points. So 140 instead of 150. This will grow in as a project grade, okay? So make sure you do well because really our only other two project grades right now are our trout reflection and then your genetic engineering poster at the beginning of the semester. So make sure you do a good job on this and put out quality work, okay? The last day of the semester is here, right? And so they want student work done in here. This is when they want student work done. I want you to have your project is due the 26th. Why the 26th? Which gives you just a little over 2 weeks, I guess, to do it. Why? I want it done here. That way I have time to get it graded, look at your grade, and then figure out where you're at the end of the semester before all is said and done. Because once these days hit, whatever gets punched in the grade book, that's what your grade is. And so I want to have some time, some buffer time in between when you turn your project in, me getting it graded, looking at your final grade, and then maybe if we need to have a conversation about where you landed, we have some time to do that before grades get finalized. Okay, so your final project is going to be due the 26th. Okay, so let's look at your rubric quick. So here's the rubric. Let's look at a couple things. So you should have your cover page done by now. Okay, you should also have your complete classification done. If you don't have any of these things done and you're not sure, you need to go back and look through these old videos because I walk you through what you should be doing in phylogenetic trees, your food web, so on and so forth. So make sure you watch these videos, please. Okay. So, oops, here we go. So looking at this, cover page done, complete classification done. Make sure you're reading these tidbits underneath. That tells you exactly what I want. Phylogenetic tree should be done. General characteristics should also be done. Okay. Habitat, I said after we had a chance to look at biomes, right? We spent time looking at biomes and biotic and abiotic factors. This is when you should have been working on that. So this should be also done. Okay. I said save niche and adaptations. I'm going to explain that here in just a few minutes. Okay. I had you move ahead to food webs. Okay. This should be done as well. Make sure you have removed something. I'm going to let you guys remove it. I told you I'm not going to do that. Just make sure you explain thoroughly what would happen in your food web if you were to remove that organism. Okay. Um, and so we've skipped niche and adaptations, relationships. I'm going to come to those today. And human impact. So we just got done learning about human impact. I had you walk through a simulation. Okay. I want you looking at human impact and really what sort of selective pressures are out there on your organism that are maybe creating a need to change. And so make sure you look over this. Oops, I don't want to do that. Okay. I am going to talk today about what are invasive species. I do want this is where I see one of the things I see kids get dinged on is they don't talk about invasive species in their presentation. They miss that, and sometimes I see points taken away there. I told you food web is also something I nitpick. Make sure you do a good job there. But this part of human impact and selective pressures, invasive species is sometimes something that is something that kids miss. If you don't have an invasive species in your area, then say that. Okay. And then I'm going to talk about 10 through, should be 10 through 12. Okay, 10 through 12 is really kind of your own spin on this. You get to change something in your environment, you then get to mutate some DNA, and then you get to talk about how those mutations would impact your organism and really basically walk through evolution. 10 through 12 is basically you simulating evolution with your organism, okay, due to some environmental change that could be made up, could be realistic. It's really up to you, okay? Really don't forget about these resources down here as well. That's going to be important. If you don't have your resources on there, it's an easy place to get dinged. Okay. And lastly, um, I said we aren't grading on this, but I will look at this part. Okay. I can't tell how long it's going to take you to present, obviously, but things I can look at. Was it well organized? Do you have a lot of typos in there or not? And do you have appropriate animations, transitions, things like that? Those things are always helpful. Okay. I would also consider including a video somewhere in your presentation. Put a YouTube link in there. That's pretty easy to do on PowerPoint. You can add a YouTube, not just a link, sorry, embed a YouTube video. That is something that's always good. Whether it's a concept on, you want to talk about, something in your niche. Maybe you have a cool characteristic that your organism has or an adaptation, and you want to embed a video. That's always kind of a cool option. Okay. But let's talk about the things that I've had you skip so far, niche and adaptations. Okay. So I'll post this. This kind of has really what you need to know to finish up your project. Okay. Really, as we walk through ecology, we've hit on most of this stuff. Some things like carrying capacity and limiting factors we just won't get to. Time won't allow it, and growth curves. But we will talk about niches right now. Okay. All right. So let's get into it. So this is number 6. It's on niche and adaptations. Grab a laser pointer here. So you need to write a paragraph or two describing your organism's niche, its adaptations, and unique features. Now, there's a lot more to this, obviously, as you look at it on your rubric, but I'm just kind of highlighting it here. Okay. Um, so Darwin said that the organism best adapted to their environment is going to survive. Okay. So that means to adapt, right? Like we saw with our finches, what does that really show? It really showed that they all specialized, so to speak, right? In their food source, in the conditions of their island. All those different finch species we saw were very specialized to their island, okay? That has a lot to do with niches, all right? A niche or niche, depending on how you want to say it, I've heard people say it both ways, is an organism's specific role in an environment, okay? So, what is your specific role? What is something that is unique about you that you do well? What's your niche? Okay. You think about a mountain lion in the Black Hills. What's a mountain lion's niche? Well, they I guess you could say that the niche of a mountain lion has a lot to do with they keep prey populations in check, like white-tailed deer. They are the apex predator here in the Black Hills. They don't have to worry about looking over their shoulder necessarily, unless it's us or something like that. But mountain lions really don't need to look over their shoulder. They're the ones hunting everything else, and primarily white-tailed deer, and I guess muleys if you're in the hills in certain areas, but mostly white-tailed deer. Okay. And so these mountain lions in their niche, they keep prey populations in check. Why is that important? Well, if you have too many prey population, maybe too many white-tailed deer, you're going to have issues of disease being a problem, food availability, right? If you leave a prey species un without any predators, their population explodes, and that creates all kinds of problems, right? We hit more of them with our vehicles. They transmit diseases easier, and there's just a lack of food, essentially. And so it ends up causing problems if you don't have a predator keeping those populations in check. Okay. How do niches benefit an organism? Well, it really allows them to specialize and get good at something that others are not good at or able to do, which reduces competition, right? If you are the only thing that can do something or the only thing that has chosen to do something, you aren't going to have any competition for that, right? Whether it's choosing to live in a difficult climate, or maybe you live only high up in the trees, or maybe you eat something that nothing else eats, that's going to reduce competition. You've created a niche, which now reduces competition, which is obviously very good for you, right? How do niches benefit the environment? Well, anytime you have diversity in species and what they do, it allows a habitat to find balance, right? When every type of organism is doing something a little bit different, basically all of your bases are covered in an ecosystem, okay? And it creates opportunities for organisms to live together, right? If we're all eating the same exact resource, right, then it becomes really difficult to live together. Okay, you'll run out of food. And so, if organisms can and species can eat different things or live in different parts of an ecosystem, that allows them to all coexist together and they don't need as much space, right? They can live together without being in direct competition. Okay, and it reduces volatile impacts due to change, right? If something changes in an ecosystem and we're all reliant on that one thing and it changes, there's going to be a huge collapse. And so, just like when you invest in the stock market, anytime you can diversify and invest in different stocks, that prevents you from becoming in big trouble if something happens and all of your money is invested in, let's say, a Coca Cola stock or something like that, right? Are there drawbacks to having a niche? Yeah, sometimes if you have specialized in something that's very unique, and something happens to that unique relationship, it can be bad for you. I always think about koalas, right? Koalas, they're the only things that eat eucalyptus leaves. Eucalyptus leaves are actually mildly toxic. And so if you were to eat them, you'd get very, very sick. But they can process them just fine, right? Well, what does that do for them? They don't have any competition for food, right? They don't have to move very fast. They don't have to really worry about other things eating their food. And so they don't have competition for those eucalyptus leaves. They live in the trees almost exclusively. You don't really see koalas come down from the tree very often. They live in the trees constantly, right? And that's great. It works really well for them, unless there's, let's say, a disease that kills only eucalyptus trees. Let's say there's some sort of disease in the plant and it kills all these trees. Well, what are koalas going to do? Well, they're probably going to be in trouble, right? So niches tend to be good. It allows you to specialize and reduce competition with other organisms. But if something happens in your specialized niche, it can be problematic. Okay. So look at your organism. What sort of niche do they occupy? What's their sort of role in an ecosystem, right? If you have a prey species, why is that beneficial, right? Think about all the predators that rely on them, right? You think about deer in general, like, oh, what's the niche of a deer? That doesn't really, they don't really seem to have a niche. They're really important for food for other organisms and also seed dispersal. White-tailed deer in our area carry a lot of different plant seeds with them as they eat flowers and forage on different plants and then go, defecate in other areas. They help plants with seed dispersal. So they do have a role. They're very important. Elephants, the same thing. Elephants are huge in the African savanna for seed dispersal. It's important, very, very important. Okay. So look at your organism's niche. Research that on the internet. Um, we skipped around and we never really got to this, but I told you to look at human impact. The one thing I do want to talk about is invasive species with this section. And what's an invasive species? They're an introduced species that have a negative effect on an ecosystem. Okay. If you go down to Florida, they have these guys. They're called the snakehead fish. They're actually from Asia, and they were brought over as pets, but have been, since released into waterways in Florida and have thrived. Right? They don't really have a niche in that ecosystem, and so they're kind of causing havoc. They don't have any sort of role. They just kind of do whatever they want and are destroying everything. And so I've attached a couple of videos. I think it would help to understand invasive species. To watch this video, click on that link. And then also Asian carp. If you fish in our area, you may have caught a carp before. There's several different varieties of carp. There's one variety of carp, though, it gets very skittish in the water when there's vibrations, and they'll jump out of the water. We don't tend to have those as much in our area, but if you go into places like Illinois, Ohio, some of their rivers, it's a big, big problem. It's causing all kinds of devastating impacts in those waterways. But an invasive species is an introduced species that has a negative effect on an ecosystem. Okay, all of these do. And then brown tree snakes were introduced to Guam. Guam has no snake species on the island. These were transported to Guam via planes in their landing gear as planes would land on the Solomon Islands. Snakes would slither up in the landing gear. Those planes would then refuel in Guam. Um, and then those snakes would come out. And because there were no snakes on Guam occupying any sort of niche there, these snakes came along and just decimated everything. They destroyed almost every native bird species on that island, and they cause millions of dollars in damage in Guam right now. It'd be the equivalent of seeing a bunny rabbit in our area, right? You guys see rabbits in your yard all the time. People in Guam see these snakes everywhere, which is not ideal, right? And so invasive species, make sure you talk about some of that stuff if that's relevant. Okay. The next thing on there, number 8, was relationships. Number 7 was food webs. Number 9 is human impact and selective pressures. Um, Number 8 was relationships. Okay, discuss any relationships like competition, commensalism, mutualism. I'm going to talk about these here in just a second. And any parasitism. If you touch on maybe two of the four, that's probably good enough. You don't need to talk about all four of these things. One of the things to talk about though is competition. There's really two basic types of competition. There's intra-specific, okay, meaning competition between organisms of the same species. As we look down at what's going on in this picture, we see several hyenas trying to get it's like a water buffalo um, from this lion, right? So these guys are competing for this food source, right? And these hyenas are competing between each other. Yes, they're competing with the lion, obviously, but there's only so much food for these hyenas, and some of these hyenas aren't going to get fed, right? Some of these will, and some of these won't. So that's what we call intra-specific competition. Deer with mating rights, other animals with mating rights where they fight, the males fight, that's intra-specific competition, okay? And then interspecific competition is competition between different species. So the competition between this lion and these hyenas, that is what we call interspecific competition, okay, between different species. Competition oftentimes creates niches, okay? What we find is that with this competitive exclusion principle is two species with identical niches, they can't coexist forever. So if these guys had identical niches, they both did the exact same thing, fed on the exact same thing, they would not be able to coexist forever. Luckily, they eat slightly different things. Yes, they'll both compete for certain food sources, but then they'll have other food sources they go after that aren't identical. And so they don't have quite the same niche, but they're pretty close, but not quite exactly the same, not identical. Okay. And so because of this, they can't coexist forever. And so organisms tend to specialize. They get good at one thing, right? And they'll create their own little niche in their environment because of that. Okay. One thing to talk about well is predator-prey relationships. All right, so this is just kind of a little graph looking at it is what's called Isle Royale. It's an island, a small island up on the Upper Peninsula by Michigan on the Great Lakes, and the small island has moose and wolves on it, oddly enough, right? And there's really nothing else except for some trees and some plants and different forage, but really not anything else. No other predators, and so these long time ago, these moose and these wolves kind of got stuck on this island and couldn't leave, and it created a very unique dynamic because they were completely reliant on each other, right? And as you look at this graph, you look at the moose in green and the wolves in purple. What do you notice? Well, you notice that as the wolf population goes down in purple, the moose population goes up, right? As there's less wolves, there's more moose, right? Because the wolves eat exclusively on the moose. So if there's less predators, well, then you get more prey. Well, what happens if you have more moose? Well, then your wolf population increases. Well, if you have more wolves, what's going to happen to your moose population? Well, it decreases, right? So as predators increase, they eat more moose, prey decreases. Well, what happens if your moose population declines? Well, so does your predator population, and then you see the wolf population just crash, right? Well, if there's no more wolves, what happens to the moose population? Well, it explodes. But then you see towards the end here some weird things happening. There are hardly any wolves right now, but you see the moose population just it goes skyrocket, then it just crashes, then it skyrockets, then it just crashes. There is an interdependence here. The wolves need the moose as a food source, but the moose also needs the wolves because if left unchecked and there's too many moose, they eat everything on the island and their population just crashes, right? They starve. The starvation leads to more susceptible to disease. Obviously, you can starve to death. And so the moose actually need the wolves. They do better as a whole when there's some wolves thinning them out, so to speak. And that's all these questions want to get you to think about there. But just know that there are some interdependence here um, between these individuals. Okay, so predator-prey relationships are really important. Might be something you talk about. Okay. Another thing you can talk about are things like symbiotic relationships, like commensalism, mutualism, parasitism. These are relationships you've heard of. You've heard of like parasites before. Let's talk about that. So symbiosis is a relationship between two or more species living together. Okay. Mutualism plus plus positive positive, meaning both organisms are going to benefit. Okay. So like let's take a look here. You have these oxpecker birds, and then you have hippopotamus, right? Well, what happens is these hippos, and you'll see this if you watch documentaries and things like that, you'll see these birds sitting on top of these hippos in the water. Why are they doing that? Well, they're actually picking little parasites off the hippos, little lice and ticks and different things. All kinds of little parasites get into the skin and cracks and crevices on these hippos, and these little oxpecker birds will pick them off. Well, that's a good food source for these birds, right? Nice, easy meal, but it also benefits the hippo, right? It helps rid them of diseases. And so we see that. So with cleaner fish and sharks, you'll see that these little fish swimming next to sharks, but the sharks don't eat them. That's because they're actually cleaning all the parasites off the sharks, dead skin, little parasites, things like that. And so the sharks benefit by getting cleaned, but the fish also benefit as a nice, easy meal. Same thing we said here. There's also what's called commensalism. This is where one organism benefits and the other isn't helped or harmed. It's unaffected. We see this with the clownfish and the sea anemone. If you know anything about sea anemones, if you watched Finding Nemo before, you know that these will sting you. They don't really sting the clownfish. They've got a sort of a mucus layer that helps kind of buffer them from getting stung terribly by these. And and so these clownfish benefit from the sea anemone, gives them shelter. So the sea anemone will swim in there away from predators, then they won't get eaten. But the anemone really doesn't care. It isn't helped or harmed by the clownfish being there, right? And so this is a commensalistic relationship. And we don't see this as often in nature. Usually there's a benefit or a harm, but this is a commensalistic relationship, the clownfish and the sea anemone. There's also parasitic relationship where one organism benefits and the other one is harmed. You've heard of these before. You know what parasites are: ticks, right, and different intestinal worms, things like that. I guarantee there's a parasite. Well, I shouldn't say I guarantee, but it's incredibly likely there is some sort of parasite that feeds on your organism. I would look at that. Okay. If you look at this gross picture here, what is this showing you? All those little white dots, those are little parasitic larvae in the meat or flesh or muscle of this is pork actually. So this is what's called trichinosis. You can get trichinosis from pork. These little larvae uh, will basically live inside the flesh or the meat or the muscle of an animal. If you were to eat this and it was undercooked, you could get these parasites in your muscles, which is just kind of gross to think about. And so that's why your parents might be a little more particular on the you don't ever eat a medium rare pork chop or anything like that. It has to be cooked all the way through, where you might eat a medium rare steak or something like that. Tends to be things that eat meat, we tend to worry about these a lot more. So like pigs, as they get meat scraps and different things like that, we're more worried about them getting trichinosis. Going back to our mountain lion before, I've kind of used that off and on. Mountain lions are known for different intestinal parasites, and you'll get trichinosis in the meat of a mountain lion. You definitely want to cook that stuff really, really well at a proper temperature. Otherwise, there's a chance you could get trichinosis from a mountain lion. All right, so I'll look at some of these. These are always really interesting to look at. I hope that you dig into those. Parasites are, I think, one of my favorite things to talk about. They're just really cool. We just don't have time. So as we look at the rest of your project, human impact and selective pressures, um, we want to talk about 10, 11, and 12. Okay, so what you have to do in 10 is change something in your environment. Okay, it can be realistic or imaginary. It can be climate change based. Um, it can be imagined. Don't say things like, aliens came down from space, and so my mountain lion had to get lasers on its head to fight them off. I'm not talking about that kind of imaginary. I mean, like, you could have a flood that floods the entire planet, and so now your mountain lion has to become aquatic and live in the ocean with gills or something like that. Or now it flies, right? You might do something that's a little far fetched, or it could be a little more realistic. Mine's more maybe on the realistic side, but you could get as crazy as you wanted to with this stuff. Okay. And so changing the environment, change something where your organism lives, and then write a paragraph describing in detail the change and what impact it has on the environment, as well as the organisms that live there. So let's say, for example, due to climate change, the Black Hills become more warm and dry. This causes drought, desert-like conditions, and creates more desert-like environment, uh, dominated by shrubs and cacti. So maybe the Black Hills now start to look like this, much drier, much less plant life here. Okay, and let's say many of the mountain lion's food source populations, which is white-tailed deer, have reduced in number greatly or moved away due to the heat and lack of food. The days are hot and dry, and the nights are cool. Many small and grazing animals avoid the heat of the day and now forage when it's cooler. Okay, so basically, our Black Hills have warmed up and they become more dry. All right, so what is that going to do to mountain lions here? Maybe that's the organism I picked. Well, you're going to talk about this change, and then you're going to talk about a mutation in your organism. Yes, you're going to have to go back to a little bit of first semester as we learned about DNA, RNA, and amino acids. You have to create a fictitious DNA sequence, 18 letters long, 18 bases. Okay. Remember, 3 letters is a codon, 1 letter is called a base. Mine, I only did 9 codons or sorry, 3 codons or 9 bases. All right. But you would need 18, so it'd be twice as long. Make sure you start with start and then end with stop. Okay. You'll have to look at a codon chart to be able to get your amino acids. You can use this one or find one online. Okay. So I'm going to make my DNA sequence. It doesn't really matter what your DNA sequence is. We're basically just walking through evolution, and we know evolution happens due to selective pressures and the mutations. So I made my DNA sequence. It's only half of what you would need. You need another 9 letters out here. Take my DNA. I'm going to transcribe it into RNA. T pairs with A pairs with U, C with G. Think about some of that stuff. You remember that. And then once you have your RNA sequence, then you can look at your codons and say, okay, what amino acid does that code for? I have GGU, GGU. Oh, that's glycine. That's glycine. Okay. So make sure that you do that. This is your original DNA sequence, your original RNA and original amino acids. And then you're going to mutate that DNA. Use an insertion, deletion, substitution. I picked an insertion because I had several different mutations in my organism, and so I thought mutating more DNA would be better. And we know insertions and deletions tend to have the biggest sort of domino effect. I inserted an A in front of the C. So what did that do? Well, it shifted CCA. Here's CCA, but now it's got shifted to the next codon. And so essentially, my first amino acid is the same, but it really messed up everything else, didn't it? And so make sure that you go through this process, your mutations. You have your original sequence and original amino acids, and then your mutated one. Okay. And then you talk about in the second part of that what that actually has done to your organism. Okay. And so I said, due to the dry, warm climate, mountain lions have now started burrowing in the low lying vegetation to stay cool. So maybe you can draw a little burrow down here. Forgive my burrow. Maybe you want to draw a burrow. And you're going to take more time than my 10-second, my 10-second uh, photoshopping here. Okay. So we created maybe a little burrow. Maybe you could Photoshop in a little burrow. Um, and they did this to stay cool during the day and close to their prey, right? They want to stay where their prey is going to be, which is going to be down here. And let's say their claws have grown longer and somewhat flatter, so we're going to give them some longer claws here. Again, forgive my Photoshop skills, right? Um, so maybe they've got longer, flatter claws so they can help them burrow better, okay? Again, we're kind of having fun with this. Doesn't have to be completely accurate. Um, and let's say their eyes and ears have gotten bigger to help them hunt at night. Give them some bigger eyeballs here, right? And bigger ears to help them hunt at night better, right? And so here's our new mountain lion. You'll need to come up with a new name. So it's Puma concolor is its real name. I changed it to Puma nocturnalis. It's exclusively a night hunter, and there's actually lots of mountain lions, and they do prefer to hunt at night oftentimes, but they don't burrow and some of these other things that we're talking about. And now they're hunting for rabbits and snakes because a lot of the deer have left. They're harder to come by, and so we kind of got to have some fun with it. We really don't know exactly what would happen if we were to completely change the Black Hills to something more like this. We really don't honestly have the perfect answer, and you get to have fun with it. That's kind of part of the last part of this assignment. Okay, make sure you Photoshop. Please don't just find a picture online and copy and paste it. Make sure that you do some sort of artistic Photoshop with there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just do your best. Okay. And again, it could be realistic. It could be a little more far-fetched. Maybe you want to give your mountain lion some wings. Maybe it now hunts from the sky. That would be incredibly terrifying, but maybe you want to do something like that. You sure could. Okay. You can give it any mutation that exists in nature, right? You can't say, well, it shoots laser beams out of its eyes. Now, unless you know of an animal that shoots laser beams out of its eyes right now, I don't want you including that. It has to be a mutation that exists in nature. There are already animals that have wings. Wings is absolutely acceptable. Okay. So let's go back quick. Let's talk about what we're doing all the way until it's due on the 26th. Make sure you go look at your rubric. Okay. Don't forget your resources in there. All you're going to do is you're going to submit your final presentation, your Google slideshow. You'll submit that. I'll go through it, and then I'll give you a grade out of 140. Remember, we said we're cutting this out because you're not going to present it. Okay. Um, so make sure you do a good job explaining here. Otherwise, I might not know exactly what you meant. You might have to throw a few more words in your slides than normal, but I hope you understand why. Okay. So make sure that you complete that. All right. This is a big one. You don't want to leave this out. If you don't complete this, it's going to be really difficult. Yes, you can get a minimum 70%, but for some of you guys hoping for an A or a B in the class, or even a C, this would potentially cause you not to be able to get that. So be careful and make sure you put out a quality product. If you have questions, we can schedule Zoom meetings. I just kind of want to see how this goes. I might do a check-in on maybe Friday and just see how things are going. But essentially, you have from today until the 26th, which gives you just a little over 2 weeks to get any missing work that you have done and your long-term out-of-school project. Okay. If you have questions, get a hold of me. If we need to schedule Zoom meetings, we can to explain things. I can look at your presentation progress. So if you have questions, we can go peek at it together. Good luck, guys and girls, and let me know if you have any questions. I had an excellent semester with you guys. I just can't thank you guys enough for a wonderful semester and a wonderful year for those of you I had all year long. Don't be strangers. Make sure you come say hi next year. I just love to see how you guys are doing. Have a great summer if I don't hear from you again.